Go ahead, Lee. Introduce yourself. And the meeting is being recorded by Zoom.
All right, folks. Dan, thank you for the intro. I'm Lee Lammert. I've been hanging around this group for a long time, and every once in a while got some interesting topics. The one for tonight is LetsEncrypt. LetsEncrypt and CertBot Wildcard SSL certificates. To start off with, let's review for a few minutes. Everybody today, Google started pushing it 4 or 5 years ago, but basically every website today uses HTTPS to ensure that the chances of a man-in-the-middle attack are greatly reduced. Not completely prevented, because there are some 3-letter agencies that can probably do it. They shall remain nameless. But basically, to establish that SSL connection or TLS or whatever nomenclature you want to use, there are some criteria that must be established. First off, the client must trust the server. And that server trust is based on proof that the IP that's actually used to retrieve that, in this case, website, is valid, is a yea verily the one for that DNS name. And that sometimes that works both ways. If you have a dedicated host with a single host name and IP, like for a mail server, then you want the reverse DNS to match the forward DNS. That's a topic for another one. At that point, once that IP is resolved, the client retrieves the certificate from that server, and then the client compares the trust relationships of that certificate to a trusted certificate authority, and the browser then verifies that certificate authority is yea verily is one that should be trustable. There are thousands of CAs valid list. I don't want to get into that, but the point is it's a 3-step process. If all of that is acceptable to the browser, in other words, those 3 criteria are met, a key pair is shared between the server and the client that is used to encrypt the connection. Once that connection is completed, like a web page is retrieved, the process is reset and is ready for the next one. That SSL certificate is an X.509 public key certificate. It establishes a trust relationship for a web server to a known authority. That trust indicates the server is trusted by the authority and therefore can be trusted by the browser. The trust is created by linking the cert on the server to a public CA, which is also trusted by one of the CAs included with the browser installation. Example here, a couple months ago, there was a hiccup in, I think it was Apple, and they pushed out updates on on some of the root servers, on some of the CA servers, that did not include some of the LetsEncrypt servers. As a result, for a day or two, a lot of Apple users got this site isn't trusted. We had to deal with some of that here. So that list of CAs included with the browser is dynamic. It gets updated on a regular basis, at least with the browser, sometimes also in between. So at that point, the server you're talking to is trusted. The browser and server can negotiate a protocol and a key pair for the connection. One of them sends half the key to the other side. It's used to encrypt the connection, and then the browser decrypts it. That certificate used to be, up until about 10 years ago, obtained from a commercial provider. Cost was $25 to $500, depending on whether you wanted somebody to say, put a red stamp on it with a seal of approval. A lot of banks still use that today because if you're using a secure connection to a bank, you want to at least a reasonable level of assurance that the server on the other end does belong to the bank. And the only way to do that is to have somebody manually go in there and verify, which is why you pay more. As the vast majority of web traffic, email traffic, and the vast majority of all SSL traffic on the internet doesn't need that validation. And also because Google updated their criteria, 7 or 8 years ago to rank HTTP sites much higher. And in general, the community thinks HTTPS is better. In 2014, a bunch of the big players got together and launched LetsEncrypt, which is a nonprofit certificate authority run by the ISRG, which was created to provide X.509 certificates for TLS encryption at no charge to anyone. Currently, LetsEncrypt is a leading provider of SSL certificates. It's free to anyone. Over 265 million websites at this time as counting. They are good. A cert is good for 90 days at a time. If you don't renew it, it expires. So you have to renew it less than 90 days. So typically you set the renewal to be for 60 days. If we have a website with a cert here, or we have a cert for another application, it runs for 60 days. And then if there's a problem, LetsEncrypt will actually send the email contact on the certificate a email, I think it's 25 days before it expires, hey, the certificate's expiring, in which case you have about 3 weeks to fix the problem. And finally, did we mention it's free? That certificate binds an identity. Identity is basically an ephemeral concept that you have a physical server out there with one end, and you have a trusted source that is linked to that certificate, which provides a way for the user to trust it. That trust, again, is established by verifying the identity of the site to be trusted. Simplest way to do that, establish that trust, in this case, to issue the certificate, is to place a key in a known directory on the server, or spin up a standalone server with hand-to-the-handshake. And then LetsEncrypt uses the ACME, Automatic Certificate Management Environment Protocol, for the LetsEncrypt server to hit that IP that you're saying belongs to that domain name, looks for the key that has been saved there, or the token, if you will. And then that proves for that website that it is the name belongs to that IP address. That validation process depends on a number of things. It depends on public DNS, and we're not talking about your ISP DNS. You typically want to run this DNS query to the public server somewhere, whether it's CloudFront, Google, or whoever you feel like using. And then that public DNS name is used with the IP to look for a thing called the ACME challenger. The directory that is commonly used in LetsEncrypt world, it's also standard for other handshakes, is ACME-challenge. One point to mention here is if you go looking for it on your server, you're not going to find it. Because when you launch the certificate process, that directory is created on the web server, whether it's a web root or one that's spun up by certbot, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then as soon as a handshake is completed, it's deleted. So if you go look at a server when you're not, and it's not exactly the time when you're renewing a certificate, you will not see the directory. Once the LetsEncrypt servers verify the token, the process is complete, and a certificate is created on the server in /etc/LetsEncrypt. In fact, if we look at Bock here, here is the current certificate, which was renewed on November 20th automatically. It lives in Etsy, LetsEncrypt. Live is the actual working certificate. In this case, SLUUG has one here. If there were 20 on this server, you would have 20 sets of these 4 entries. And 4 directories. Each directory has a symlink for the cert, chain, full chain, and a private key. Private key is copied for every instance, and you will see a sequence of entries in archive. You know, we have done 5 cert renewals here. There's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for each component. And if something broke during a renewal, you could always change these symlinks back to the previous version, like the 4th version, and get the site back up and running until you fix the problem. On the server, that tool is called CertBot. There are a number of standard plugins for CertBot, which tells CertBot how to perform a particular handshake. In fact, if we look at the configuration file here for, let's see. We'll talk about, I don't remember which one it is right now. Yeah, we'll come back to that in a minute. Within the CertBot process, the basic certificate is obtained, as we said before, with either standalone, which spins up a temporary web server and uses authenticator and plugin, and you create, and standalone looks for the plugin here, CertBot internal, yada, 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 or web root. Again, web root is if you're using a working web server, in which case you have to tell CertBot where that physical directory is on the system. CertBot will place the Acme token in there, and using iAuthenticator and iPlugin, it's good to go. To use standalone, port 80 must be available and uncommitted. CertBot spins up a temporary web service on port 80. The challenge is saved in that Acme challenge directory, which is actually done in memory. The LetsEncrypt servers retrieve the challenge, verify that the token matches the one that was placed by the client on the server, which establishes the trust relationship. Yea, verily, that IP is correct for that server name. The certificate process completes, and the server is removed. Web root is a little different. We were talking about that before. It uses the existing server for that host name. Don't have to change the server configuration. CertBot places the Acme challenge directory in the root directory of the server, our virtual host. The LetsEncrypt server retrieves the challenge, host name to be trusted. Got Acme challenge. Once complete, the certificate is created and the directory removed. Anybody have any questions about those processes? Again, that's for a basic site. Your 2 options are standalone authentication or web root. And it's fairly straightforward. We've used it for hundreds of times here over the last 4 or 5 years.
This is Stan. I'm not clear on what's the difference between the standalone and the other reference, the web root.
Okay, with standalone, it means that certbot spins up its own web server and listens on port 80 for the handshake process. Everything's done in memory, and when the handshake is complete, everything's thrown away and clear. In the web root validation or handshake, you have a physical web server, var/html/htdocs or whatever it is. You give that path to certbot. Certbot actually places the Acme challenge in that physical directory on the web server. In which case the LetsEncrypt server goes to hostname /.acme challenge, finds it in the running web server, and once complete, the certificate is issued. The basic difference is standalone means you don't have anything on port 80, which is typically used for a physical machine, like when we're running a container. Now we got 40 or 50 websites in containers. One container does the certbot. And he always has port 80 available because he just spins up when he has to do handshake. In which case, all we care about is standalone. Whereas if you have a physical Apache or Nginx instance on the server, and you are physically serving files on that server, you don't want to take that site down to renew the certificate every 2 months. So that's when you use WebRoot. You place the challenge files in that physical location on the server for the web server. The LetsEncrypt servers retrieve the challenge, complete, throws it away. Operation of the site has not been affected. And I'll show you here in a few minutes how you, how you actually hup the server. We'll talk about that when we talk about automating the process. That work, Stan?
Pretty much. It's a much better than what I was thinking. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, so it's simple. Like I said, we run in a container. We actually saw that in the Docker series a couple of years ago before COVID. Chuck set it up for us. I've been maintaining it ever since. Bottom line is, WebRoot is standalone, can easily provide an SSL certificate trusted by any browser in the world. Well, for most people, that's an acceptable solution. Most people have a single website. You're securing a single host name, whether it's the domain name or www. or what have you. And either standalone or WebRoot can effectively obtain a certificate for you. What if, though, you had something like SLUUG does? We have stlinux.slug.org. We have new Linux, Stan? I forget.
newlinux.org, but it points to newlug.slug.org.
Right.
At this
newlug.slug.org. So newlinux.org actually redirects to newlinux.org redirects automatically to newlug.slug.org. So it can use the Wildcard certificate, slug.org. You've got www.slug.org, newlug.slug.org, stlinux.slug.org. We have one certificate for all of the SIGs. That could be more.
Yeah.
I use one for Omnitech. We use it for, six mail servers, 3 or 4 web servers, and it's a much simpler process than creating a cert for each one.
Just an aside, I think at this time the slack.org thing is not pointing to the right place. We'll fix that later.
Okay. We can deal with that later.
I keep forgetting to tell you. Sorry.
Put it in an email, Stan. Then I'll put it on my to-do list.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So think about it for a second. We want to validate or trust any host name that ends in .slug.org. We can't do it with cert. We can't do it with standalone or WebRoot because there's more than one possible host name for it. So the question is, how do you establish a trust relationship? A site certificate trusts a single DNS name for the IP, any IP associated thereof. A wildcard certificate is trusted for many DNS names and possibly different IPs. So a wildcard cert must be trusted for an entire domain, SLUUG.org. So how do you trust that? Ergo, the wildcard cert challenge must be done in DNS. Does that make sense to everybody? In other words, if we've got a single site, sorry, I keep hitting the scroll wheel on the mouse, on the trackball. A site is a fixed domain name, DNS name. A wildcard certificate could secure 5, 10, 20, or 1,000 domain names, discrete domain names. So site certificate is simple. A wildcard certificate is also simple, except the fact that the trust relationship is not for a site and a single server, whatever the server is, whether it's a container, a virtual host, or a physical machine. But a wildcard cert must trust the DNS in the domain top level domain, second level domain, as in SLUUG.org, not a host. So basically, instead of securing a single site, www.slug.org, you're securing .slug.org. That make sense to everybody?
That's what I was figuring. DNS was how you make this thing point to the individual sites.
Well, that's how you resolve the name.
Yeah.
But
yes.
if for a wildcard cert, you trust that, you have to trust that
entire domain.
Right. And you can't do it with a host name. You have no way to physically trust the entire domain. So I'll show you how to do it. Every time a cert is renewed, the challenge must be updated. It must be challenge must be retrieved as a DNS record, a text record, using public DNS resolution. Well, that's a heck of a lot more complicated than the standalone web root we've been talking about. But there's a couple ways of doing it. The simplest way to do it, this is one of them I used a couple times over the last few months. I haven't automated it yet because I haven't had a need to. I don't know how long we're going to use it. This is for one of our clients. Hence, the authentication method is manual. Manual from the standpoint that I will personally handle it during the validation process. It is a DNS challenge. There's my our email address. And the server we're going to use is Acme v2 at LetsEncrypt.org. We'll always have to have agreed to terms of service. And the domain name to secure is star. This was the domain name we were using. Any questions about the manual process? So that DNS checks record, sorry, this should be nextradev.com here. I was building this out of a copy. The text record has a string, as an authentication string. And that challenge is actually created in DNS as _Acme challenge. So the host name here would be _Acme challenge .nextradev.com for the example I showed you, or .slug.org when we talk about SLUUG's process here in a minute. TTL 1,000 seconds. It's in record. The text record is blah. And note that is the same random character key that was generated by CertBot. Okay, so this is the key value I'm seeing during the manual renew process here. I don't want to take the time to show it. But when you run the certbot manually, it'll pause and say, here's the key. Press enter or continue when it is available for retrieval. So here's the key that was presented. I created the text record in DNS. And then I wait a few minutes. I updated the text record, restarted DNS, and then I waited 3 or 4 minutes, dig space underscore acme challenge.nextdev.com txt until the answer session had the key that matched what I put in DNS, which also matches what I got from certbot. Make sense?
I think so.
Cool.
Says Stan.
Everybody else awake?
We're awake.
Yes.
I had muted a couple of noisy mics.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so here is the, after you do the manual process, extra demo time has been saved at LetsEncrypt. Your certificate will expire in March 07. Simply run certbot again. To non-interactively renew all your certbot certificates, run certbot renew.
When it says non-interactive, that means the root process, that non-individual process.
I think I know what you're saying. This is the certbot script in Etsy cron daily on Bock. And basically all it does is run certbot renew. This is non-interactive from the standpoint that there's no manual intervention required. The process is entirely done automatically. So non-interactive is totally automatic. And we'll talk about different components of that here as we finish the explanation.
When you do the manual and then you do this certbot renew, does that automatically from then on incorporate what you had done manually?
It incorporates what you had done, correct? Yes. But if you did it manually, it's not going to renew automatically. You'll still get the prompt, which means you can't do it in a cron job.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank
Right.
you.
Okay. As we said, LetsEncrypt certs are valid for 90 days. You renew it every 60, which gives you 30 days to catch any problems. And LetsEncrypt will send you a notice. It's anywhere from 30 to 25 days before expiration that it will expire, in which case you've got at least 3 weeks to check it out, figure it out. Now, assuming you want to automate it, here's what we have on Bock. In the renewal /sluug.org.conf, renewal parameters, we use RFC 2136. That is dynamic DNS updating. As the authenticator protocol used by certbot. We have an account at LetsEncrypt. We designate a server, and we have a separate file for our credentials. If this is all working properly, it allows the process to be entirely automated because we have provided all of the credentials and other data we need in the credentials file. We tell certbot that the dynamic DNS server that accepts updates is localhost, port 53. The key name is SLUUG.org. I'll show you that here in a second. It's actually a 500 or SHA-512 that has been predefined. And there is a secret associated with that key. And like I say, it's defined as a HMAC SHA-512. These files are on Bock. You can see them anytime you want. although you need root permission to change them. So here is the key that is in named.conf. Okay. This is the key that certbot's going to use, and this is the key that named has as a secret. So when certbot uses this secret to send a DNS update to 127.0.0.1, because certbot's running on Bock, it sends the same key, which allows the update to proceed. That is how certbot automates the DNS update to insert that text record into the SLUUG.org domain. And that works every 60 days on Bock, because the certbot renew runs every night. And when 30 days to expire is reached, it will actually run the renewal. And as before, certbot renew is all you need. If you don't want to see the emails every day, you define your mail to as null, or blank rather, and I'll suppress the daily emails. So what have we not talked about?
Are there any known security issues with this that you're aware of, other than the fact that every system cracker in the world also has free access to using this process for their botnets?
Well, that's true, but you know, since you're using a SHA-512 hash as your secret, it's kind of hard to crack. And if there was any instance of somebody trying that, it'd be fairly simple to drop a failed to ban filter and jail in to stop it. I'm sure all the big name servers like Microsoft and Outlook and Google and Yahoo, and I'm sure they implement it, but you know, we're such small potatoes, you know, it's no big deal here. Anybody else? Come on, guys, if you change your certificate, what do you have to do?
You have to change your DNS.
Well, we handle that automatically. What do you have to do on the server?
Update the files.
Well, the files can be updated. We're missing something here. If you change your certificate, what do you have to do for that certificate to be used?
You have to move it into place.
Would you have to have it identified by the CA?
No.
Oh, that's what
It's-
the signing does.
That's what the signing does. And the symlinks I showed you actually update themselves automatically. In other
Then you
words,
have to restart the bloody server so
Bingo.
it'll read the new
Bingo.
certificate in.
bingo. Let's encrypt renewal hook / deploy. These are little scripts that Mike did a long time ago, a couple years ago. Restart Apache, Dovecot, and postfix. Thanks, Tyler.
I've done one too many of these at work.
Understood. All right, any questions?
Yeah, could you explain a little bit more how the dynamic DNS is involved? Because you're setting a DNS record, but I'm confused about the 127.0.0.1 IP address part of it.
Okay, in the SLUUG world, we do our DNS kind of differently. Bock is the master for the domain, which runs, or the bind server, bin D9 runs on Bock. He is a master for the SLUUG.org domain and any host associated thereof, along with the other domains that we also support. We do not publish Bock as a name server for SLUUG. We use a service called BuddyNS. We pay $3 a month, and we get to use 2, 4, 6, 8 servers on BuddyNS as our name servers. In fact, if you look up here, let's see, how does that work? Right, it's, these are the actual name servers for SLUUG.org. And I don't remember what the rationale was, but about 3 years ago, BuddyNS switched to hash names for the name servers. Anybody know why they did that? So when you want to name servers for SLUUG.org, this is the resolution of that host name. These are the 4 name servers that we're using for SLUUG.org.
And so whenever you're creating this DNS record, is it updating Buddy DNS to have that, to know about this Acme DNS record that it's creating?
Good point. I forgot to mention that. The SLUUG.org is the master, and as soon as he posts an update, as a dynamic update, I don't know the exact process, but each of the slave servers will receive an update. I don't remember offhand if the slave servers look at their time to live, which I think is set for about a minute or something like that, or you'd have to look up RC 2136 for that.
So Bock acts as the master, but isn't publicly accessible. Buddy DNS acts as slaves to that master, and they have access to Buddy, but
Right.
nobody else does.
Right. All the public DNS servers are BuddyNS.
Right. So the trick here is that nobody's actually talking to Bock
Right.
normally,
Correct.
but other than the Buddy DNS servers that are replicating those DNS changes.
That makes sense?
I think so.
That's good, Stan.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, somebody?
Yeah, Lee, I've got a question.
Sure, Ed.
So in the sequence of events, the challenge response is going to happen, and you're going to update the your local guy, and then Buddy DNS is going to get updated shortly thereafter. But my question is, well, we were playing around with DNS the other day, and it took about several hours, I think, for it to get fully populated throughout the entire internet. So when LetsEncrypt looks at it, how did they resolve that? They don't resolve it that quickly, do they?
They don't. Hang on a second.
I mean, they're not close to you. They're somewhere off in California or somewhere.
Somewhere in here. I don't remember where it is, but we wait an hour. We have a delay of 30 minutes or an hour in the handshake process.
Okay.
So once we post the record to Bindi on Bock and make it available to the slaves, we tell CertBot to wait. It's either 30 minutes or an hour. I think it's 30 minutes.
Oh, because the cert box not going to actually issue the request to update
Right.
until that happens. Okay, that's the part I
Yeah.
was missing.
CertBot times out.
Right.
And like I say, I don't remember exactly where that is in CertBot. Yeah, 300 seconds. Here it is. You tell CertBot your propagation, you wait 300 seconds or 5 minutes, I guess here. But you could make that an hour, half hour, an hour, or whatever you need. for the propagation in your environment.
But
Does LetsEncrypt, you think they might cache the NS? I'm assuming there's some ns.slug.org thing, which is hosted by Buddy DNS. Do you think they might cache that, so that they don't have to do a complete resolve every single time?
If the record is not there when certbot finishes the 5-minute time delay, it faults and issues an error.
Okay,
So it's up to you to catch that error and then go back and add another 0 on here or whatever you need to do to make sure it propagates.
all right. So far you haven't really gotten any errors then, right?
No, this has been running for what, year and a half, something like that.
Oh, okay.
And at one point, Mike found an issue with Dovecot not getting updated or not getting hupped. And I don't remember what the fix was, but he fixed it.
Excellent. Okay, well, good to know.
Okay. Anybody else?
yeah, I'm wondering where it would need to propagate to, right? Because it sounds like Buddy NS points any slug.org request to this name server here.
No.
No? Oh, okay.
Buddy NS is the public name server for slug.org. Bock appears nowhere in the name server records. In other words, when we looked at the NS for slug.org, all of the public name servers are Buddy NS. And let's see, here's the actual name definition. Bock does not appear there anywhere. There's a couple of advantages that it means nobody's going to be looking for Bock as a target to hack. And B, if DNS on Bock dies for some reason, everybody else is still alive. If the name server went down, we don't care, because all public's DNS queries are handled through Buddy NS. So all services would still run while we fix the server on Bock. In fact, every environment I've set up, it has in our case, it's NS0, which is the master. The master is not listed anywhere as a public name server. And then we've got here's ours. We've got NS1, NS2 in the rack here, and we've got 3 Buddy NS servers we use out in the wild. But nobody here sees our internal name server. NS0 is our master here internally. In fact, when I set that up 10 years ago, about 5 years ago, when I moved all the name servers to a Raspberry Pi cluster, that's the exact same way I set it up, because that's what the folks had done on Bock 10 years ago or something like that. That make sense?
It's starting to.
Yep, thanks.
All right, anybody else? Oh, in that case, I'll turn the floor over to Stan or Gary or whoever wants to pick it up.
I will point.
Alrighty. Thank you, Lee Lammert. And welcome everybody to the monthly general SLUUG meeting. For those of you who either new to the group or haven't been around for a while, the structure of our meetings on this general meeting night is, we call it the Oreo cookie version. We've got a presentation on the front, which is what Lee just did. And we got a presentation on the back, which you'll hear more about in a few minutes. And in between, we have that soft, gooey icing in the middle, where we do announcements, general Q&A, things like that. So that's where we are now, is that announcement part. And so with that, I'm Gary Meyer. I'm the president of the group. Our speaker just now was Lee Lammert. Lee is the chief scientist at Omnitech. He's also the treasurer and a longtime officer of our group, and obviously a real font of wisdom. And so we really appreciate his presentation tonight. And also Omnitech is a great benefactor to the group, providing us with some servers and as always, Lee's font of technical wisdom. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks to the people who participated tonight. The questions and comments from the audience are always an important part of the presentation. We're kind of an informal group, so yes, by all means, chime in, ask questions, make comments. Our speakers all tend to appreciate it. So, yes, for those of you again who may be new to the group, yeah, we understand if you just came for the first presentation tonight, we understand. You're certainly welcome to stay through the announcements and the general Q&A. And if you just aren't interested in the other presentation tonight, not your cup of tea, we don't, we're not insulted if you have to drop off. Check our schedule and come back in the future. And there'll probably be some people who come in just for the later presentation. So we know that happens. So by the way, any of you who attend 2 SLUUG meetings in a calendar year, you're a member. There are no dues for this organization. You can be, you can actually vote. And of course, there'll be arguments that the vote is rigged and it'll have to go to the Supreme Court and a congressional hearing, but that's a problem for another time. So, so yeah, anybody's welcome, basically. So, one other thing with reference to new or returning people, we're always interested in how you found out about the meeting tonight if you haven't been around for a while, or what intrigued you to come to the meeting tonight. Stan is usually the person that collects that information. So you can either, if you just want to do a private chat message to Stan and give him a clue as to where you found out, or if you just want to turn on your microphone for a second and let the rest of us know, we're happy to hear from you. And let's see. So anybody who wants to, just jump right in. And if nobody does, I'm going to move on to other announcements. If anybody has oh, go ahead.
This is Stan. I'd like to point out that we're recording this session and we'll post it up on our archives so people can go to the SLUUG main page, and over in the right hand corner it says presentation archives, and we'll have the video and recording and the PDF if Lee remembers to send it to us. And later on, any other presentation we have this tonight. You can watch both presentations later, and if you still have questions, you're welcome to post your questions to the discuss mailing list that we maintain. That's all I had to say about that.
All righty. Let's see. I just saw a incoming chat message from Maximiliano. He says he does not have a microphone. That's okay. If you got something to say or add, by all means. Let's see. You say, oh, you found this group on Meetup. Great. I'm glad to see Meetup is getting the word out to people. So welcome, Maximiliano. And yeah, by all means, if you've got any more questions or comments, go ahead and post them on chat. We'll catch you.
This is Stan. I'd like to point out that I hate Meetup. It screwed up our. And it sent out an email earlier today saying that the meeting was tomorrow, and then Lee had to go in and correct it for us. So, but that's not the only reason I hate Meetup. It's a pain. It really is.
Stan's just crabby.
Well, that true, and I have a vocabulary that will stop a sailor in his tracks. And
And the meetup screw up is probably my fault when I was making an alteration. I probably accidentally changed the blasted date somehow. Didn't intend to, but I was probably the culprit who caused the problem. So, but so anyway, with that, other announcements. Let's see here. And I'm gonna switch over and share if I can. There we go. Sharing the SLUUG calendar. This is at slug.org/calendar. And it's kind of a joint effort. A number of us try and keep this updated, which is a pain. No, but it used to be a more specific calendar of just things that were going on here in St. Louis. Of course, we still try and advertise that, but with the age of COVID and the fact that so much stuff is available as online remote meetings, we kind of expanded it. And so in one way, it's missing a lot of the traditional meetings that were St. Louis meetings, but just aren't meeting anymore. Like here, there's the Elm Code Night, the Elixir Language, Open Day to St. Louis. Just a lot of these groups have not been physically meeting nor been offering Zoom or other meetings. So, but it has been a busy week. Let's see. Today there was the Google Dev Fest. So that was going on today. Last week, pardon me while I get control of the screen. Last week was the AWS reInvent conference, Monday through Friday, big conference. And apparently too many of their people were there, because if y'all were paying attention yesterday, AWS had a major screw up and caused some bad outages for about 7 hours. And so they're still recovering from that today as far as, but anyway, there's a number of,
Strangely enough, Amazon.com was forcocked last night too. I was
yes,
trying to order some parts and it was really bizarre. I've never seen Amazon.com do that before. They normally run a pretty good software organization.
there's the old term in our business about you got to drink your own Kool-Aid. And when a company, does something in software or whatever, or hardware for that matter, but if they're making it and trying to get other people to use it, first thing to do is check and make sure they're using their own software, because if they don't trust it, why would the customer? And so at least we know that Amazon does use their own AWS services because they got burned like everybody else did yesterday.
Like
So,
Microsoft using Linux servers.
yeah. You got it.
Well, there's a reason for that.
So, oh my.
Weren't they using BSD for a while? Way back when?
I don't recall. They may have been. Anyway, if anybody sees anything on here that you want to point out or talk about, by all means, say something now, and we'll follow up on it. If you see something in the future, post it on our discuss mailing list, and people can chat about it there. And if you know of anything that we should list on here, send a note to editor@slug.com, and we'll try and add it onto the calendar. So, Stan,
Yes, sir.
let's see, we've got a couple things coming up later this month.
Well, 8 or 9 days from now is the St. Louis Linux Users Group, and the event there is going to be, ta-da! We don't know yet. And then about 5 days after that, on the 4th Tuesday of the month, is going to be the new Linux Users Group. Christmas is going to be on a Saturday this year, so I had the choice of either moving the holiday schedule up to the the 21st, and I decided, no, I'll just leave it at the 4th because that week before Christmas, people may have a lot of shopping to do, and et cetera, et cetera. And then after they eat their Christmas meal on the 25th, they'll be laying around the next week with nothing to do. So maybe they'll want to show up on the 4th Tuesday at the new lug. Newcomers are there. They come in. Anybody new or wants to know about Linux are welcome. The first newest guy in the room gets to ask all the questions. We have Linux newcomers that have been newcomers for the last 7-8 years, and they help out with when there are questions and suggestions, because I certainly don't know everything about what a new user may need to know. And often Phil Bunch and Ed Holland come in to make corrections when I put my foot in my mouth. So, but we could also spin up something on the 21st if people wanted to. But the newcomer, the new Linux.org sessions and the Slack meetings are done with Jitsi instead of Zoom. Which is a little bit different than this session. Anything else? Call for help?
Call for help, also known as general Q&A. So you can ask a question about anything you want. But if it has something to do about computers or the internet or open systems, it's got a lot better chance of getting an answer from this group. So with that, anybody have any questions or points of discussion they want to throw out on the floor?
Currently unmuted.
Gary,
Yes.
Zoom.us has new window.
is there a Santa Claus?
Well, yeah,
You
Gary.
said I could ask about anything.
Zoom.us.
Well, yes, Ed. I mean, you just saw, Lee and you've seen myself on camera and I mean, we got
Gary, you're no Santa Claus. You're Treebeard, if anything.
I'm the evil Grinch. Lee is Santa Claus. That's it.
So are you going white this year? Or you staying blonde?
It slowly is getting away from me. It's going whiter and grayer all the time. So hey, I hear actually the companies that have Santa Clauses for the stores and the malls and stuff, they're having trouble recruiting Santa Clauses. So oh my. Anyway, okay. If nobody has any general Q&A or comments, we'll move on.
I got a comment.
Oh, okay.
Want a good laugh at me?
Sure.
So I was trying to upgrade my software this last weekend, and I couldn't figure out why my production server would talk to a remote server. Wouldn't talk to a remote server, but my dev server would. No clue. Every time I invoke the method to go tell Python to go poke that other server, it'd come back bad SSL cert. Now this certificate is an internally signed server certificate. So I have my own certificate chain that I built to make it so that Python wouldn't complain about not trusting the other side of the conversation. Evidently, Python changed behaviors between versions 3.7 and 3.9. So
Alrighty.
there's a host or a environment variable called requests_CA bundle. And in 3.7, you can override it, which I was doing. I just said, here's the CA bundle you're supposed to use to verify the certificate. Go on with life. 3.9, you can't override it. Don't know why. Turned it off. I was going through the environment variables today and between the two environments to say, okay, what's different? I'm like, oh, stupid Tyler. You didn't make your dev environment like your production environment. So yeah, I was up to 3 o'clock Sunday morning trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with my program. Had to finally roll it back and tell my boss I'm deploying it this next weekend. Oh,
Ouch.
I'm like,
We all learn from mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you're not trying hard enough.
But you shouldn't have to make the same mistake 5 times in a row.
yeah. I believe I turned that on because a year or two ago, see, our company's kind of weird. Certain websites, if they're important enough, will have a public certificate signed by like Quantum this or VeriSign or Symantec. And others, we can just get away with signing it with the internal certificates that Active Directory uses. I think I turned that on because I was trying to figure out why an external website wasn't resolving that was ours. And there was something wrong with the QuantaVis certificate chain that's in Python. And Python follows Mozilla's certificate chain. So whereas most Chromium browsers, IE, will follow the certificate chain built into the operating system. I think in Unix it's like etcpki something. That gets updated through your package manager. Mozilla had to be a autistic child and say, no, we get to control that. And Python has a certify package out there that allows you to update that certificate chain without the rest of altering the rest of the code. People just install that and keep that updated instead of worrying about, did Linux get an update today and change the entire certificate chain on me? Yeah. Certificates are fun, said no one. Especially with the new TLS 1.3. Oh, they monkeyed with that thing totally to the point where they I'll have to find the show me talk, but they basically gave a giant middle finger to all those data loss prevention devices. Said, no, you don't get to decode this stuff. Duck you.
I don't know, Tyler. I think Lee was having fun with TLS.
Any other questions? Comments?
If nobody has one now, and certainly you can, but you know, we'll at the end of Tyler's talk here coming up, we'll certainly be doing questions about his talk, but there'll also may be time at the end to do you know, if somebody has another general question or comment. So keep thinking of them, and you can also do them later this evening after Tyler. So okay, so hearing no other immediate questions, and I don't hear any, I'm going to introduce Tyler. Tyler Rudie, who was just speaking a moment ago. Tyler is employed over at I'm having a mental block.
Siemens.
Siemens. Siemens over in Westport. Siemens was where we were meeting before COVID struck. And they're very hospitable for us there. We appreciate it. And Tyler's title, I always mean to ask Tyler his exact title at Siemens, but
Oh, I wanted wizard, but then somebody pointed out the fact that wizards are never late, nor are they early. They always show up. They're always exactly on time, and that screws with payroll and timekeeping. So right now, I'm basically a system administrator that does a lot of integration work.
And I always get the feeling, although I didn't have the title exactly right, I kind of had an idea what Tyler's life was like, because usually when I talk to Tyler, the song that would come to mind would be Britney Spears, that "Whoops, I Did It Again." Because usually with Tyler, it was a thing of, yeah, he went to a meeting or talking to his boss and he said, "Oh, sure, yeah, we can just bring up another Linux server to do that." Or, "Yeah, I got a tool in Python that'll be able to take care of that." And that's how Tyler wound up with another project laying on his desk for taking over his life. So, and apparently that's what happened with the presentation that he's going to give us tonight is he thought, yeah, we can take care of this little situation that showed up at work, and it became a project. So Tyler's going to tell us all the ins and outs about it, and I'm going to turn it back over to Tyler. Thank you.
All right, so this is more of a this exists. Tyler may not have perfected it, but we had an issue where my coworkers weren't doing their job, and for a very sort of good reason. So to start this out, I joined Siemens in 2009 as a data center operator / account operator. Basically what happened is the company says, "You're not doing anything in the middle of the night while you're babysitting the servers. You could turn on accounts and you could change names." And Tyler started in his ways of, well, that sucks. I think I can take a piece of code and do that job quicker. So initially, when I started, the process was basically this. We had to hold on to, for lack of a better word, artifacts of people like HR telling us to do stuff. So the existing processes established for me was basically evolution of taking the file and putting it in the filing cabinet. We would get an email from HR, from manager, or from the user requesting something, and we would get, and it would pop up in our shared mailbox. We would go get their file, because we would save it off as a .eml file. MSG is the open source one. We would attach that like you would attach another email to that file, and then we would put it back on the server. The domain auditor then knew where all this stuff was, so they could, if they had a question, they could go look at that. So the business went on. So I've had 3-4 people retire in my team. I moved out to being a programmer, so they needed to hire people, and our inline management had a few people in India. And so they had this crazy idea that we would put a couple people in India and a couple people in the original team in St. Louis, and everything would be good with the world. Small little problem to the tune of 7,000 miles as the crow flies. And I'm pretty sure the fiber doesn't go that direction. So basically what it boiled down to is that entire process was taking entirely too long. You would pull the email out of the share or open the email out of the shared mailbox, which was in St. Louis. That took a bit. Then you go get their file, which meant you had to sit there and go through the directory looking for it, and that'd take a bit. You'd have to copy it over locally because there's no way you were opening it off the server. Attach it and put it back. This literally doubled or tripled the time that they took to do these processes. So I got some thinking. It's like, why are we doing it this way? I'm going to go steal the left's idea and we're going to reimagine how this paperwork behaves. So as conceived, I run a Django Python server with a Postgres database behind it. And one of the nice things about Postgres is it has this thing called a JSON object, which means I can take anything, serialize it down into JSON and store it in the database without having to worry about schema. So instead of having to drag that email all the way to India and all the way back, I'll just have Python open the mailbox in the same data center, copy the data off into the database, and attach it to the user. So how do I do that? So I started with what's my Django website. And now that it's with Django version 3, you don't have to have Postgres. You could do it with a SQLite file if you want to. ExchangeLib is the library that I found to use with our Exchange server, of course. IMAP is there if you have any other mail services. They turn on the IMAP and then there's a serialization process called Marshmallow that they put out. So here's how it worked. Well, the first thing I had to do is I had to figure out how to talk to Exchange. So I did something totally different. Here's my guinea pig. I just straight up created an archiver. So the goal of this is I knew that we had another mailbox that we had software throwing data into, to the tune of, I believe, 17 terabytes when I looked at it initially. Not 17 terabytes, 17 gigabytes. Terabytes would have been ludicrous. So for you guys, I went out and built a outlook.com email address, which runs on Exchange. And let's go talk to this thing via Python. Come on. A nice thing with this Exchange Loop is it's set up so that, see if I can make this bigger. View mode, undock. No. There. And can I get the text bigger? Because I know somebody.
Could you bump that font a couple times?
That's what I'm trying to find. No control zone. One second. Let me see if I can get the display, because this is not asking what I want. That doubled it.
Much better. Thank you.
Screwed up all my windows, but whatever. So that's gonna bug me. Excuse me while I rearrange them again. Okay, so to get into Exchange, I went and created a variable out in the system's settings to store the actual username and password. And create credentials object with the username and password in it. And because this is Outlook Online, we can use the auto discover. You just put it all back, didn't you? That's what happens when you don't pay attention to the dialog box that pops up. And then, this is the interesting thing. This first line here, I just give it my username and password. This allows you to sign into other accounts that you have permissions to. If you work with Exchange, you may have service accounts, other mailboxes that for other people that you want to get to, and then we just tell it auto discover equals true. And it'll go out and ask through the Microsoft DNS magic to where's the Exchange box. And now, look here, I have a account with all the contacts list and a few things that have been aliased, like the inbox and outbox, the trash, voicemail box. But you can actually get to the entire print dot dot tree. You could get to everything that's stored within the database. So here's the Yammer feed, external contacts, Teams message data, and Teams chat history, all stored within the Exchange mailbox. Recoverable items, so I believe this is where things go to die, essentially. Quarantined email. Storage for OneDrive. That's in here too. Wow. The graph data that they keep on you. Sync data. Nice thing about this is we could take things out of what's been habitually unstable. I don't know about you guys, but every time I create a PST file, I make it bigger than what? More than a gig. It has a very bad habit of falling apart. SQLite can theoretically can hold up to 4 terabytes of data. I'll need a bigger disk. So let's look at the emails, because what I was trying to do, because I was learning with this, what this library was capable of, was just basically prevent me from having to deal with all that data just dumping into this service account. You know, it basically kills Outlook when it was trying to read it. So what we do is basically what I did is I created a loop where I went through where I went to the inbox. And this acts like a object relational model, like the database in Django, but not as nice. Here I'm just going to ask for all of it, because I'm doing this as a temporary. We'll just pull the first one off of it. We now have an email, and this email, I would think, it's for me, for my normal account. And here's the details we have. Okay, here's all the attachments. I have attached to it a file that's a signed file, and here's the actual, dig in here, content. The account I pulled it out of, index, conversation topic or subject, all the message headers. So that wonderful thing where you got to say, okay, where did this come from? Where did it bounce through? Those are all stored here. Is it important? Is it from me? Don't know why I want to know that, but hey, whatever. Is it read? Well, if we look at the where did it go? Nope, it's unread. Is read receipt requested? Nope. Reply to sender, the text part of it, and then the HTML body. So now that I have the email into Python and visible, now we got to reduce it down to just what I want, because 90% of this is just fluff from Exchange. I don't care. I just want who's from, who is it going to, BCC, CCC, the headers, the subject, and the body, I think. Is there anything else I wanted?
You were saying BC and CC, blind carbon and carbon copy?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is where Marshmallow decides to come in. Nope, wrong project. This is the one I was copying everything out of. This one. So that starts the process. So I use Marshmallow to say, okay, this is what I want. So, and what it basically is. So the two CC and BCC are all nested contacts, which is an email and a name. Header is the name and the value. So that's nested into the object. And this is telling Python how to trim the object down into just what I want. Time received. And then, so what we do is, archive dot till dot encode import email, and we could say f is equal to email process. That's not how I did it. Sorry, I gotta. Yale. Oh, it's dumps. So it's dot dumps. Oh. Oh, that's right. Oh, wait, I probably. I always completely forget to instantiate certain things. So you have to actually make a copy in memory. Equals mail dot dumps. So now, if I look at the variable f, all it is a dictionary of all those items. So basically what I've done is I've just rendered, I've cut out everything I don't want from Exchange, and I've converted it into a raw dictionary within Python. And then just save it to into the database. Import mail as DB email. Have email used. And we say email dot objects dot create and the dot time received, and then email data equals F. So this is just the standard nomenclature for say creating a record within the database. So, and I just steal the message ID off of it in Outlook to act as the primary key and pull the date from Exchange so I know what day it was received. And if I could get my variable names right. Oh yeah, that's right. Exchange web. I know that importance. But where did I actually set that? Sorry. I'll just remove the. So if we go look at the database now, we now have a record. And a mess. Okay, so what did I messed something up again. So to get it back out, so it looks like something that my coworkers could actually read, I had to play some tricks with the display. And admin, no, that just tells me what. Okay. It's not in the filter. Render exchange here. Just solve. Okay, so basically what this thing is looking for is build a regex, because everybody loves regex, to yank everything out between the first and last body. And then I build a list in Markdown. Why there isn't pipes? There's beyond me. Okay, so build the string to from CCBCC sent subject. And we build out the data from Mistune. Mistune is what I use instead of Markdown 2. It seems to behave a little bit better. This, I'll fight with it, but it's supposed to render out in HTML. Oh, here's the body of that email. Go away. So if we look here, here's my body of my email. Here's all the headers from there. Do not know why this is messing up. And to and from. Yes, that'd be nice, but not. Exit. And basically I let this unleashed on that service account, and now it's down to about 500 meg. I believe I haven't talked to him in a while. I don't know if what my exchange guy is know before. So the last thing we need to do is move this out of the inbox, because we've already processed it and we don't want to process it again. So let's just say bring up the original message object and move. And actually I have to do one more thing. Tell it to move. We have to go tell it what folder, or go find the folder. So you have to, this is how you would search for a folder. Hence the reason why I'm using 0 there to pull the first one off the list. And then you just do X dot or pull up the email and tell it to move to the archive. And then if we look here, look at here, the email's gone out of the inbox and it should be in the archive. So, and that's just playing around with emails. The Exchange lib docs go over meetings, contacts, attachments, recurring email times out of facility. So you have people who forget, like me, to turn on their out of office email. You can reach in and turn it on. Mail tips. Oh, out of office information, max message size. But now it's, if you have to fight with Microsoft and you know Python, this is a pretty useful tool to have in your arsenal. I save it to the local Postgres database, and it's now available to them on the webpage. Going full data. Let's see if I can pull up the table. Basically, it's the same thing, but you add one item to it. So on this model, we just got email, the mailbox, message ID, the date it was created, the date was modified, and then email data, which is holding everything. You add just down here, and you probably just rename it from email data to data, a file extension. So I have inside of that tool a this is actually my code. I've actually stepped it up one more. Do I have it? So the first thing I do is I link it to a master list of people. So I have a link out and a type. And I've taken it one step further where I start classifying the emails that come in. And within our termination process, I actually now ask this thing, do you have a termination email for this user? And they don't even have to go looking for it. It just displays a number on the web page. Rendering gets a little bit more hairy. You now have to have a router to pick up where the things are. And I guess the last thing is dumping everything. So in my full production code, which I plan on releasing if you guys want to look at it, you notice I have here a limit of 1,000 that it will pull. I was crashing Python. I had to tell it only to pull the first 1,000 out and work on those, then go back for the next 1,000.
I'm sorry, you said you were crashing what?
Python.
Wow.
I have 32 gig of memory and it was chewing it all up trying to process all this. So this is the basic process for what I go through is I want all the emails in the inbox, reversed ordered by date time received. So I'm going new oldest first and pull the first 1,000 out. This is a note for me to watch to see how many are left in the account. While there's none left, print out how many's left, go through the emails that you pulled, append, and this is a trick within Django. I create a list here called toLoad, and it creates all the email objects in memory. And once they're created in memory, it moves them over to my archive folder, so I don't have to look at them again. And then it just dumps them into the database. So it takes the whole thing and it shoves it into one giant SQL blob and throws it at the database. Researches, reruns the search, and then reports how many are sitting in memory. That doesn't make sense. And then it this is a check to make sure that they were parsed properly. And finally, at the end of it, I tell this to go in and say, go and look for X number of days left, and then purge out those emails. So I leave about 30 days worth of emails in there. And that keeps the Exchange Mailbox down, which, you know, my boss likes because she's got that mailbox back to a usable state, and Exchange likes because I'm not eating 17 gig of database. And that was just the fun. Let's blow up a different type of data. So once I learned how this was dealt with, or how to deal with Exchange, loaded into a database, and then I just said, okay, now we just need to understand, like I said before, what email is this? And I kind of cheated there. I used the Outlook ability to filter the emails by who they are and the subject line. So all the termination emails go into one folder. And I just come out here and I get that folder out of the actual, or go find it, and then I just replace inbox.all with that that folder itself, and that becomes my import. All this sits on a Python server right next to the Exchange box, and then it displays out via the web page. And I haven't heard any complaints. I'm pretty sure there's complaints. Don't know. My next step, and I'm working on this, is getting everything read into that was that's on the file server into the database. So I will have to convert the MSG files, which there is I think it's called OLE file. Okay, pipe. Oh yeah, there's a fully formed tool that you can just install and use it without running any. Um, where did I find? That's going through the Win32.com client. I thought I saw a. Yeah. So there is an actual library out there that I believe it's actually, yep. And it's just the same process of going through, opening the item, figuring out what in the item I need to keep, saving that to the system, and then building something to render that out, in which my process is usually I create a markdown version of it and I pass it through Mistune to create the HTML. It makes it just easier building the strings out.
I'm sorry, say again, what you pass it to what to create the HTML?
There's a
What do-
library that I called Mistune, M-I-S-T-U-N-E.
Thank you.
I was having a lot of trouble with Markdown 2, which is another one, or another Markdown parser. And it will, basically what you do is you go through, it has a method called HTML, which will take in Markdown as a string, and it'll spit out the HTML equivalent, just like you would use that on GitHub, GitLab, any of the code sites. The biggest issue that I keep on running into is I will use that regex, this one here, to extract the HTML body.
I'm sorry, which regex?
Wrong one. Oh, it's on the model. So, because this one right here, to look for everything between the two body tags.
Ah, okay.
And sometimes they'll set formatting in there and it will screw with the rest of the Django admin page. So I'm still working on understanding how I render a HTML page inside of an HTML page without either one of the style guides screwing with the other. Another thing for me to learn. One of these days, I'll be able to actually build my own webmail client. Because I actually, part of this project, I also have a SMTP server that receives email. Well, I can just email the system itself. That, or one day I'll build a honeypot. See how many penny stocks I can get the scammers to email me about.
It's always nice to collect spammers.
I mean, all it is disk space. Now, I don't have to pay for any software. But yeah. I also have delusions of, grabbing scammers by the collar and shaking them. So, oh, that's right, because it's rendering the list above. Okay. I'm sorry I couldn't make it more flashy. It's kind of one of those side projects I work on when the world isn't burning. My goal is basically, I don't want to have the new guys have to go through what I do or had to do when I started at this company, which was hunting down paperwork all the time. Let alone, having to figure out who deleted the damn paperwork. I basically have my archive locked down, so only person who can actually delete stuff is the admin.
Good
And
idea.
I mean, that was probably one of the things that actually sold it to my domain auditors. Like, oh, paperwork won't go missing anymore? Yeah. Yeah. I also have to bug my coworkers because I looked at the stats and notes who does what. And I've just seen my boss and my one other coworker's name on the terminations, and I'm like, you guys doing anything over there, or other than sleeping? Oh well.
Doesn't sound like it if they terminated them.
Well, that's the process that I've converted is the terminations, and they're supposed to be auditing these terminations so that they can see what happened. And the goal is that I can then, or now it's converted into a dictionary sitting in a database. Now I can do all sorts of little fun things with SQL. So I can go ask dumb questions like, how many people has XYZ auditor done in the last 30 days? Oh, you haven't been doing any? Or this person was terminated wrong. Who did that?
Yeah, you're gonna make enemies with that. Back in the early 70s, friend of mine was running some of their computers down at Barnes, and they were trying to organize their operating rooms.
Yeah.
And so they started keeping track of who's doing what kind of surgery and how much time did it take. Yeah, that caused more than a few problems, some people were banging that stuff out really fast and some people were not. And they never kept records before. This was back in 73, 74, something like that. And they never kept records. They didn't have any clue. And after they had kept the records for a while, the results didn't please the big shots. And they proposed some changes that would, like seriously increase the amount of work could be done in the operating rooms. And yeah, they had to throw it all away because the powers that be just didn't like it. I'm sure I'm sure by now that's all old hat.
Wait,
but
I have a T-shirt.
It didn't go
that
down well at first.
Using statistics and hard numbers to do management by objectives, that's kind of a classic problem. In fact, the exact same thing was WashU Medical and Barnes, and we were watching some of the things they were generating, and I think I pissed off a number of MDs because they basically had rigged their statistics to show it was a successful operation as long as it wasn't reported to have caused a problem within, like, I forgot it was 21 days or something like that, but whatever the time period was. And so when you looked at the details, you'd find so many of these things where it was a mystery fever until after the 21 days, and then it was admitted, oh yeah, it's an infection from the operation, but that doesn't count against it anymore. So you got to be careful sometimes with the details.
Oh, I know that because did I guys ever tell you about our old help desk system?
No.
When I moved into doing my job, I initially they started complaining about me not doing tickets. Everything was tickets in the ticketing system. So I may have figured out how to talk to the HD system or the help desk system via SOAP. I may have plugged all my scripts into the system to open a closed state so nobody had to deal with it. Ticket saying XYZ was done. I got yelled at 6 months later when they ran the reports. Because I was basically demolishing everybody else statistically. Like,
Is that nice?
you wanted to know what I was doing?
Yeah.
Now I just keep it in the database, and if they ever complain, I just pull it out. It's like, see here.
Yep. Makes sense.
Question, does that marshmallow work just strictly with Python, or does it work with other things?
It's a Python library. So
Okay,
as
cool.
long as
Cool.
you can get it loaded into Python, it will serialize it down into a dictionary /JSON.
Okay.
So basically Python or marshmallow is the list of things that I want.
Right.
And how I
right.
want the data structured. There's a lot of stuff in there. It's like, don't give or duplicate.
Right.
So that's Exchange. IMAP is also is actually built into Python. You don't even have to install it. I don't know how many people here actually fight with Microsoft anymore these days, let alone the Exchange system, but that's how my business does this, or this shows them to do business. And right now we're in the, how should I put this? People are asking why we do things the way we do, and then they're freaking, oh yeah, that's right, you're a software company, not a company that builds widgets. Yeah, all to make it so that people can talk to each other better. I
found the whole concept of moving everything to generate something to pass it across the web, HTML, was
Mhm.
interesting. And
But yeah, that's the other interesting thing is the entire Exchange lib runs over HTTPS. There's nothing custom. There's no IMAP. There's no active sync like Outlook does it. It's all working with the web page. The biggest issue I kept on running into, and it was just crashing Mistune on me, was one of our headers called SMEX, which I think is part of our antivirus package, kept on crashing. The converter.
what do you see as down the road for this in your project?
Right
I
now
think
I
you've
have
mentioned-
all my termination process is now working inside of it. I
Yes.
still need to get feedback from that, people actually using that. I think the
Yeah,
next
you
big
mean
thing.
like employee terminations?
Yeah. So basically this is changing our posture. So normally what would happen is our identity management suite would do its job. It would kick out an email to the ops group, which would then have to process that termination to make sure that it was processed properly, which part of it was a PowerShell script. So I'm storing the data from that PowerShell script in the same object. So the result of that automatic audit to say, yes, we turned it off and yes, we double checked it is all sitting there within the database. So the next goal would be to move to the higher process and do the same thing. And then other processes like requesting service accounts and stuff like that. So it's all in the database, it's all tied to the user. The biggest issue I keep on running into is bad data coming out of HR. So let's see if I can show this.
That's never surprising.
90% of my problem is dealing with garbage from HR. So like this one right here, this is their master file, but they have duplicate primary keys. So I have to go through and
Did you say duplicate primary keys?
yeah,
I thought.
I do not know where. I do not know how Workday works in the background, but it just boggles my mind. So
That's an Exchange that had duplicate primary keys?
no, it's a file I get out of our HR system. So this is me actually pulling the stuff out, and to figure out who the email is about, I go through all this nonsense. So first I look at the subject to see if there's what we call our primary key called the net ID is in it. And then see if I can find that in the database. And then if the type is HR term, which is what I called the HR termination email, it then looks for a workday ID, the words workday ID colon and digits, the space between it. And I try to go look up that ID. If I can't find it, then I try to find the email in the body. And if it doesn't find that, it tries to look up the net ID that should be in the body of the email. And I still get failures. So
Are they still paying anybody they fired over the last 5 years?
I wouldn't be surprised. Well, they probably are not now because they converted everything over to Workday, but I wouldn't be surprised. It just boggles my mind how bad the data coming out of HR is. They have literally one job. Keep a master list of everybody that's employed by the company and what they get paid. I don't know if it's a political thing or what, but the guy the data engineer who did it, that set everything up, quit and moved to a different job 2 months ago.
Rule number one,
It's-
never be around when the sandcastle falls down.
Rule number two, if you're around, make sure you have a giant excavator to pick up the pieces.
Yeah. Well, but you're so smart, you can fix that problem, right, Tyler?
Give me 3 months. The other question is should I answer that problem? I keep on looking at them and say, why am I doing this for you again? My job's the accounts. Why do I have to go fix the HR data? Oh, that's right. My job's crap when I get crap data. Bloody Geico.
Yeah, that rule never changes, does it?
No. They just find new and faster ways to mess with stuff.
To create mistakes. Yeah, that's been a joke for a long time. What are you going to do with your faster computer? Make mistakes faster. I told one of my bosses at some point in the past, everybody had to have goals, you know? And I said, I finished my goals and gave him the list and everything. And as I was walking away from desk, I said, well, now we know what I'm not going to work on this year. Because everything that's a goal is going to get overcome by events.
Oh,
You know?
my boss wonders why I keep on putting go on cruise as
No.
my goal for the year. Go on a cruise.
Oh,
Be completely disconnected from the internet for a week.
not on a cruise ship, you're not.
But it costs an arm and a leg to make a connection back to the mainland.
My cousin and her husband went on an Alaska cruise 2 or 3 years ago. And one of the criteria was, could he get his baseball games on the cruise ship? Turned out it was no big deal, but I mean, he wasn't going to go if he couldn't get his baseball games. Can you believe that?
Some people, of course, I don't follow baseball that close, so
Well, I don't either, but you know. Hey, last week I got the belts all lined up on my new drill press finally. And it doesn't even sound like a tin can full of rocks going down the road anymore.
Well, that's good.
It actually drills very nice.
That's good. Well, let me bring us into a little focus here. I'd like to ask, is there any more questions specifically about the project that Tyler's been working on? And then after that, if there are none or when there are none, we'll go back to a general Q&A. If anybody has any final general comments, call for help or comments. And then after that, if we want to just dissolve into talking about odds and ends projects and just idle chit chat, we can do that. But for those who are still looking to do something official here this evening. So any more questions specifically or comments specifically about Tyler's project here? Well, it sounds like
I think I put them all to sleep.
no, I think you covered a lot of things, and so yeah, it's like a few times I had to be scratching my head, going, okay. So yeah, probably about 2 o'clock this morning, I'll probably wake up and go, oh, that's what I should have asked. Yeah. So all right, well, Tyler, thank you very, very much. You've really given us a tour de force through the hectic world of wading through HR documents and emails and how to somehow make them available in a rational manner. So as usual,
And tying multiple tools together is very interesting.
yeah. And that's what you always do, Tyler, is you always manage to, pick a couple of tools and somehow make them tied together to get a job done. So like I say, like Britney Spears says, whoops, she did it again.
Yep. There's another. Oh. Where did I put this? You guys ever seen digitally addressable LEDs?
No.
What are they? Question mark.
Let's see. So normally with LEDs, you'll have 4 wires, one for the green, one for the red, one for the blue, and then a common neutral. So
Right there is your addressable LEDs.
So I have been following a project that there's some YouTube videos on called either by Dr. Z or Intermediate Tech. And these LEDs are have only 3 wires. So they have a positive and negative, and then a third data line. And what you can do with them is all sorts of little, let's see if we can, so with some LEDs I got around here, you can tell it's just shifting from one LED to another. These ones have a small controller in them. And you can just send down and say LED 3 go to green, LED 5 go to red. So you can do all sorts of weird effects with them.
Yeah,
and this guy,
Amazon's got addressable LEDs.
so this guy came up with a this thing called the Quinn LED that runs runs an open source piece of software called WLED. It's got it all programmed in, and it's interesting. You can do all sorts of weird little effects. So those light shows where they'll have the talking pumpkin heads and stuff like that. It's a lot easier with this because you can call each LED specifically.
Oh,
10-minute warning.
I'm testing it right now, so maybe next week I'll show you guys as a small 5-minute aside when the topic's over.
Okay, that'd be a cool thing. Neat.
A little microcontroller for
Mhm.
Christmas.
That's something to look forward to next week. Cool.
yeah.
Anybody need to go back to more general Q&A? Questions, comments about things other than Tyler's talk that we may not have brought up at our halftime.
I'll ask one, Gary.
Sure, go ahead, Lee.
Has anybody ever gotten a, the old standard contact form, HTML form? Has anybody ever gotten a mailer script to run in a container? No, guess not. Thanks.
I'm scratching my head. The contact ACL form. I'm blanking.
A contact form, you fill in a form, you hit the send button, it sends an email to you. HTML form on a website.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I've done
Yeah.
that in Django.
Well, now the problem is in a container, you want to do it as simple as possible. That way, when you rebuild a container, you don't have to do a bunch of cruft to it. And the mainstream one in the community right now is PHP mailer. It's so freaking complicated, I can't get it to run in a container. Because it uses this new PHP object thing called Composer, and Composer is a separate install, and it's got a bunch of configuration crap for it. And all I want
I
is
could
a
probably
simple form
throw.
mailer.
I could probably just. I don't even think that would require. Well, I could probably throw one together with Django and just a SQLite install, and it could just.
Well, no,
reset
then
itself.
you got to install Django and SQLite in the container. I don't want to have to do that. That's a maintenance headache.
Hmm.
I mean, PHP is a simple install. You run a container with PHP instead of Nginx, or PHP and Apache versus Nginx. But
Right.
I don't want to have 40 different things added to the container just to run a stupid form mailer.
I mean, the only other thing would be something like in JavaScript. The key would be is that you want everything stateless in the container, and then you need a SMTP server to act as relay for them to send it to.
Right. Just need a basic SMTP server in the container that will hook to a local email server, which is fine because it authenticates via, the subnet. Don't even need credentials.
You don't even need the server in the container. You just need an SMTP client.
Right.
Basically, what you're trying to do is like what a PowerShell send mail message does. But yeah, in a web page. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, I was teaching a web admin class. We did it in Perl. But I sure as hell don't want to install Perl in a container. I want something simple, and I can, when I rebuild a container, it doesn't add a lot of complexity. I have to debug and break.
Is this sitting behind some other web server, or is this just a?
Well,
Just
no,
looking for a standalone web app that just runs, that will take input and produce an SMTP email.
No, there's a server container, Apache and PHP.
Does sound like a pain though, if it just can't be done in container. That's weird.
Yeah, and it can't.
Bad software design, not by you, by,
PHP mail function takes a 2 subject message headers and parameters. So you'd have to set up the form to pipe into that function.
But that's what PHP mailer does, and I can't get it to work. It creates a PHP mailer object, and with all the basically you would have to install that code, and I've never dealt with it. I don't know. I think I'll just turn it off.
I went through 4 different encryption libraries when I upgraded my main server this last time around because they just were not working. They say do this, do that, and I'm like, I am doing that. Why aren't you working? No, you're not. Yes, you are. No, you're not. Finally found one that would play nice on Python 3.9. Still means I have to dump the database and reload it Saturday, but boy, a royal pain in the rear end. The
A lot of
bloody
times-
auditors want me to encrypt the entire damn thing.
Is they'll write that code and test it on their desktop. And then they'll put it out and say, here, this works. And what they've not done is they've not tried to install it on a bare naked machine and find out what dependencies they've really included. They probably have no idea what's all on their desktop anymore. Ask me how I know that.
how do you know that?
Yeah, I've done it. Screwed myself sideways several times.
Well, I've borked the Python install on my work laptop. I don't know how I did it. Python just will not create a virtual environment from my IDE. I have to always go in as an administrator on the command prompt and say, go build that virtual environment. The only thing that's saving me is that I don't have a laptop on order, according to the PC guys. Should have arrived sometime in January. It's only been 6 months.
January? Is a laptop that hard to get?
If you want the nice display, yeah, from Dell.
Okay.
Okay, any other broad-based general Q&A things that we need to or that we could possibly talk about or address? Actually,
I
good.
just reminded myself another one.
Okay.
The diff command on Unix. How hard is it? I've been running a diff -BUR to compare folders to see if I copied everything.
Yeah.
Is there any way to tell it just to look at the file names? Or get that to run faster, because I'm literally starting it and going to work, and it's not done when I come home. Yes, it's a massive set of folders.
Yeah,
If it's sitting there hashing every bloody file, it's not needed.
why not create a list of the file names, just the file names in each folder, and then, on the target and the source and the target, and diff that.
Could you do a dry run with rsync?
Could try that. Basically, I found a copy of my data and it's sitting in another folder. I'm like, this isn't where it's supposed to be. I have 2 copies of my data. What the hell? So I was trying to make sure that, you know, I accidentally copied instead of moved.
I pulled down an FSLint. It's not supported anymore, but you can find it out on the internet. Works very, very well for finding duplicates.
I guess I'll have to mount those both via NFS if I wanted to use that. That is the oldest logo I ever have seen. Mandriva.
Oh, it's a good old name.
Mandrake. Isn't that?
Well, there's Mandriva. That's a separate thing. We're not seeing
this-
a logo. I don't know what you're talking about logo wise.
Tyler's no longer sharing his screen.
Let me share it again.
We see your screen now.
Yeah, there it is. Ta.
I was just looking at this FSLint. Like, there's an old.
Yeah. Definitely a goodie. That looks like that could be a good little addition to next week's meeting. So yeah, we'll look forward to this. Cool.
Mm.
Let me interject one other thing, or actually 3 other things here. You mind if I override your screen share there?
Sure.
All right.
Ooh, green.
There we go. And from green back to our calendar. Something I should have pointed out, and I didn't, on our calendar. Tomorrow is a busy day. Rancher Rodeo. Obviously, there was some talk about containers by both Lee and Tyler tonight. Sousa, as you may remember, bought the company called Rancher. And so their Rancher is basically their rodeo product is something to control and deploy your Docker containers, Kubernetes containers. So if you're interested, 9:15 to noon tomorrow. It's a freebie. Also tomorrow, the Linux Foundation has been doing, setting up a number of presentations. We had some of them on the calendar earlier. There's one coming up tomorrow, talking about shifting application security. Since it's done by the Linux Foundation, of course, it sounds like it should be security issues that are apropos to Linux. And also tomorrow, there's a IT Pro TV session on the most in-demand IT jobs. So if you're wondering where to shift your career, at least in the near term, you might be interested in checking out that. Again, that's tomorrow. You can find out the details here on our calendar. Any other things that we should do and get on the recording? Or are we ready to close off the recording for the night?
I think we're good.
I
for
suggest
tonight.
I suggest we stop the recording.
All righty, this has been the Wednesday, 8 December 2021 SLUUG general meeting. And Tyler Rudie was the main presenter on his Python project of moving Microsoft Exchange into a SQL database. And Lee Lammert did the basic tutorial. It was on Lee, help me. What did we just do? Oh, on
Cert,
Wildcard certificates.
Wildcard cert
cards.
and TLS and X.509 certifications. So cool.
All right.
Thank you.